Nintendo have Mario, Sega has Sonic, and whilst you could probably argue good old Drake nowadays, you couldn't pick a clear winner between Crash and Spyro. So it was to the surprise of few that when the N.SANE trilogy was a success, that the modern day owner of both franchises would give Spyro a remake also. Fast forward to its release and Spyro Reignited was the best selling PS4 game in Australia on its first week, similar to Crash being top during its debut 1 year ago in the UK. The duo seem to be locked in a never-ending battle for the title of PlayStation's favourite neon-coloured anthropomorphic creature, so I would like to throw my hat in the ring and say which of the two games I preferred. To decide this, I'm marking both games in 5 categories: original material, audio, visual, gaming experience, and replay value. Some of you may question the importance of all these, but I think this is the fairest array of markers to determine the better game, so it's what I've gone with. With all that introductory stuff now out of the way, let's get straight into the first category, original material. Or to be clearer, which of the original trilogy I like the best. No matter what I pick here, this will be by far the most controversial and the decision I'll have the least amount of reasoning behind, as really it's just my personal opinion on what I want more from my gaming experience. I don't want to cause any arguments and I don't want to spend all day on this, so I'm just going to sum up the 6 games like this. The Crash games, especially the first and I guess you could say the second, are more difficult games than the Spyro trilogy. The Crash titles I'd say have a more faster paced gaming experience, as well as a more traditional platformer linear level design. The Spyro trilogy is a lot calmer in comparison, with more focus on exploring and exposing the level secrets. And that's as deep as I'm really going into it. So which do I like more? It's Crash. I like a decently high degree of challenge when I play games, especially platformers, so Crash is more up my alley. And that's all I can really say to pick between them really. Audio. This category would be a combination of both music and voice work. And I put these two together because I only wanted 5 points because I thought it'd be easier to pick a clear winner. And I'd also like to start this with an apology for anyone who's looking for analysis on quality of audio, as I'm going to be marking this on the difference from the original trilogies, because I feel most of them are either unnecessary or were negative. Basically I'm just a guy who hates change. But returning players are looking for sweet nostalgia. So hearing the first Tiki of Molten Crater having a completely different voice, inflection, and degree of desperation in his plea is disheartening, and to those who are new to the games wouldn't even bat an eye that all these creatures from the same land have the same voice.
Can't get anyone out of the Tiki Lodge long enough to do anything about it.
I can't get anyone out of the Tiki Lodge long enough to do anything about it.
So yeah, a few minor characters in Spyro had this effect on me. The already mentioned Tikis, the penguins of Frozen Altars, the Sheriff of Dino Mines, the Monks of Colossus, what have you done, and that one dragon in Town Square who really wants you to get that dragon egg.
He's a thief, and he's stolen a dragon egg!
Were noticeably different and disappointing. And I also kind of feel like the dragons of Spyro 1 really should have been re-scripted, as most of the conversations somehow come off more awkward than they did 20 years ago for some reason. I think my main complaint with voice work when it comes to Spyro is Hunter though, as he's lost his kind of dopey speech pattern and sounding much more stonery, I think. And I just think it's weird. Crash is a lot harder to judge for a few reasons. First of which is the change of Cortex's voice in Crash 1, which I guess is kind of necessary to give a more consistent voice over all 3 games. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to miss ha 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 during the final boss, but it's a sensible decision I guess. The second really is the lack of voice lines that are in Crash in comparison to Spyro. I'd say my main concerns for this are Brio and Engin's voices, but I'll totally forgive the later just for this amazing performance going into his first battle.
Like Dr. Cortex said, give the 20 crystals you've collected to me!
So in voice acting I give the thumbs up to Crash because it took me out of the game less. Looking at the music with the same mindset of a returning player wanting to re-enjoy the games, the decision to add the original soundtrack to Spyro was a blessing. And whilst I played through practically the whole game with the original soundtrack on, I would try out the new tracks every now and again, and though I admittedly found them worse generally, some were better and they were all generally faithful. I couldn't say the same for Crash because some of the tracks in the latter part of the first game got butchered in my opinion. Crash 1 is much a darker game than the other 5 original games I'm talking about, and this is reflected in the looks and sounds of the likes of Slippery Climb, The Generator Room, and to a lesser extent Lights Out and Jaws of Demise. So why they had the idea to liven up any of these tunes is just completely over me. This and the combination of the tracks generally being worse is enough to give Spyro the win, as I found myself while playing Slippery Climb muting the soundtrack in-game and playing the original soundtrack off my phone. Yes, I did go through all that just to declare a draw, but if I don't defend my boy Clay, who's gonna? Visuals. Needless to say, I'm not going to go on a rant and say at all that the originals are better in this regard. Now I know a lot of people were hurt by the censorship in Twilight Harbor, but honestly I thought the goo shooting paired with all these test tubes filled with liquids of some kind just added a lot to the level and gave it a whole new character. Now before I'm accused of double standards because I just said I enjoyed Crash 1 less because they made the game seem less dark, Spyro 1 was never meant to be taken seriously. The Spyro game's cutscenes point this out with the parody of sports interviews and Spyro never really looking like he's bothered by anything happening around him. Plus the barrel guys are way more annoying and frustrating. We just had a level where people had to stand next to spawners to have stuff to throw at you. Now this guy's pulling barrels out of his backside like they're stray hairs? Where's my consistency? I liked almost all the character redesigns from both games, bar Hunter again. I always saw him as like a 12-year-old fair-skinned skinhead, which went well with his general goofiness. But now he looks 40 or something. I don't know, it bothered me a little less by the time I got to the end of the game, but despite that I am giving Spyro the W here, due to how beautiful the landscape looks. Crash is always designed with straight and small corridors, not allowing the sights that Spyro offers. These breathtaking views, as well as redesigns in levels like Twilight Harbor and Dark Hollow, give just so much more personality and visual elements to the Spyro games, which I just can't ignore. Gaming experience. A big thing in Reignited is how it ran for some. I don't think anyone will say Spyro ran as intended, and pretty much anyone that has played this game has probably noticed. Perhaps the game is just a little too beautiful. As for Crash, Dark Souls. The smoothing of the platforms and the jumping mechanics of the three games becoming more consistent made the first game more difficult than you'd remember. I seem to recall the last time I played Crash I got all the gems relatively easy, but I lost a good 15 lives on Native Forest and Road to Nowhere. The former I recall being fairly easy last time I played it. But with the new gem collecting rules it kinda balanced out the difficulty for me, so I had no real problem with it. I'm gonna go back to some of the characters real quick, and whilst you think I might have been done because I've gone past both the visual elements of their design and the voice acting, there's characters like Bianca where what I have to say has much more weight here. I actually enjoyed everything about her from Midnight Mountain onwards, she be a cutie. But any kind of threatening presence or evenness that she actually has early on in the original version of this game, due to her angry tone of voice, her evil eyebrows, and her poised confidence, is robbed from her by being so adorable and unsure from the get-go. That and no one fears someone showing this much leg. This execution hurt my investment in the story as she didn't come off as mean-spirited for a single second. The only other example I can really think of a character completely taken out of the story because of how they're being portrayed was N.Brio in Crash 2. There's an air of desperation in the first, but in the remakes he just goes full on Looney Tunes.
You must gather the gems, not the crystals.
But what really gives Crash the edge is the amount of glitches in Reignited. From enemies going out of bounds, gems going out of bounds, Spyro doing whatever he's doing here, Sergeant Bird doing whatever he's doing here, and enemies generally not doing what they're supposed to. This game's a bit of a mess at times. It really makes you think Year of the Dragon's rushed, as I experienced 90% of the glitches that I just told you about in this game, and the baby dragons didn't get the treatment of their crystallized parents got from the first game. It's a shame too, because I thought the repeated animations for the babies were much more noticeable than any repeats in dialogue the dragons in the first game had. I also missed the little shifty eye thing Spyro did sometimes when he waited for the counter to increase for the mad dragons he's freed. It was the highlight of the conversations by far. Replay value. Now to some this might not seem that important, but it really is to me. Getting your money's worth for a game and playing it for as much time as possible really helps me justifying buying these games instead of just dusting off my PS1. You could argue that the two new levels added to Insane would give it the win here, but I'm not including them in my decision as A, Spyro might get their own free DLC levels, which would really date this review terribly. B, I'm judging these games on how it came out because not everybody has the ability to update, and it may be impossible in the next few years, who knows. Again dating this review, and to be fair, some of the things I've mentioned like glitches may have been fixed in the updates, who knows by now. So it'd be unfair for me to judge this with free DLC and updates added later and not the prior subjects. But Crash wins anyway, because it added time trials to 2/3 of its game, while the only thing Spyro added was skill points to the first game, which really only adds an hour if not two if I'm generous gameplay to Spyro. Don't get me wrong, both are fun and I'm glad I bought both, but the fact I completed Spyro in 2 weeks and I still need 11 Platinum Relics in Insane Trilogy to this day really shows you the major difference you get in game time when playing these two games. So in conclusion, Crash wins 4-2. Now even if you say you prefer Spyro, in which case you flip the first result, that still makes it a 3-3 draw. And I think this is fair because I don't think there's any way you can claim Spyro is a better game. Even if you find all the glitches in the world funny, as I do, and therefore enjoy it, the fact that the game doesn't run all that well and has no additional features, whilst Crash added a new mode to 2 of its 3 games, for me says you've got to say at least Crash is equal to Spyro, even if you don't even like the game that much. But that's it. Thank you for watching, everyone. It means a lot. Please feel free to murder me in the comments section, and until next time, adios.